What's up? The episode of the 10-7 MMA Show. Thank you guys so much for all your support and coming back and being here. Western Mass Climber is here as per usual. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Just a couple of quick things I want to announce at the top of the show for those of you guys who are here right now. The show is still steadily growing, so we're pretty excited about that. We're up to 377 now subscribers as of today. I always want to celebrate those little victories and those little kind of movements in the right direction. So that's really fun. Another thing I wanted to let you guys know is Justin and I, for the first time ever, are going to be co-commentating it this weekend in Montana for Fusion Fight League. So if any of you guys are interested in checking out this event, it's going to be incredible. It's on Friday, so they're not competing against UFC Noche. So it's this Friday. And yeah, I cannot wait. You know what's funny is the first time I commentated for them back in June, I was pretty nervous. And, you know, one of the reasons was because it was my first time. But another big reason was because I wasn't commentating with you, right? Because we have a rhythm and we've been doing it for so long. So now I'm not really nervous. Like, I'm going to do all my same preparation the same way. I'm reaching out right now, trying to get in touch with the fighters. But I just feel like we know exactly our strengths and weaknesses. And I know I can lean on you with the grappling knowledge and all that stuff. So it's going to be so much fun. I just cannot wait. I just got to get there and get some good sleep. How are you feeling about this weekend?
Man, I'm really excited. It's been a couple months since I've done some commentary. Fusion, unfortunately, I just haven't been able to work with the dates that they've had. But hey, we're back in action this weekend in Montana. I couldn't be more excited to be in the booth with you.
Now, what's actually even cooler that we're going to be doing Fusion Fight League this weekend is actually Sean O'Malley, who's headlining the UFC Noche card, started in Fusion Fight League. So if you guys didn't know that, Sean O'Malley is from Montana, and that's where he got his start. I believe he was a champ, right? He was the bantamweight champ.
And actually he suffered a loss in the Fusion Fight League cage. I believe he got finished early in his amateur career in Fusion Fight League.
Wow. Okay, so that's one of his very few losses. I know he's lost to Chito Vera technically, although he doesn't consider that a loss. You know, one thing that I want to mention two things off the bat before we get into all the news from this week. The first thing is that I've been watching a lot of stuff about Sean O'Malley, and I just wanted to throw this out there. And this is why, even though, and I know you don't want to pick because I know you ever kind of, you know, both those guys and you train with Merab and things like that. But I just become more and more impressed with Sean O'Malley the more I learn about him. So a couple of things you guys may not know. Number one, he manages himself, which I believe has got to be incredibly hard. Right? You have a manager. Most fighters have a manager just to help them negotiate and sign contracts and do all that stuff. He does it all on his own. Number two, the thing that you guys may not realize is and I think I mentioned this briefly on Friday, but he's so dialed in on every single element of the game, whether it's his diet, his sleep, his weight cut, his training, his commitment to jiu-jitsu, which we haven't seen, and maybe we'll see a little bit of it. And we've seen a little bit of it, but maybe we'll see more of it in this fight. And not to talk negatively about Paddy Pimblett, for example, but just by example, you see somebody like Paddy who's very talented. We know he's the real deal. He's in the top 15, but isn't seem to be at least like super disciplined when it comes to every element. Maybe his training is disciplined, but he's obviously his diet's not so disciplined in between fight camps. But then you see somebody like Sean O'Malley who just seems dialed in on all these elements. I just gotta believe, regardless of what the odds say, I just got to believe somebody like that is going to be favored to win. I mean, what do you think about my logic on this front?
No, you're absolutely right, man. And that's what it's going to help with his longevity too. You know what I mean? Like Paddy Pimblett is an incredible fighter, but when you're, you know, missing scraps, you know, you're not picking everything up. You're not dotting every I, you're not crossing every T. I mean, he can have success. He can have short-term success, but he's not going to have long-term success like somebody like Sean O'Malley. Again, that the sleep, guys, for fighters, the sleep is so important, man. That recovery tool, it's the best recovery tool from injury, from being sore, from fucking overtraining. Like, and, you know, when you look at someone like Paddy Pimblett who balloons up to over 200 pounds in between fights, unfortunately, it's going to be, I think unless he cleans up, he's going to have a short career.
Yeah, and then I heard my boxing coach was telling me the other day when he had some back injuries, a lot of the food that you eat when you're eating garbage, like he's obviously eating, that inflammation is going to kind of reside in your bones and your muscles and whatnot, and that makes it more difficult to recover. So I can't even imagine. I mean, Paddy Pimblett might be the most talented fighter of all time, given how he treats his body and the fact that he's still essentially undefeated in the UFC for the most part. So anyways, that's one thing I want to talk about. Last thing I want to talk about is the Sphere card in the UFC and some of the criticism it's been getting. Here's the thing. Okay. And I feel like a lot of people love to crap on the UFC, crap on Dana White. Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? All right. I just want to say something right off the bat. People are complaining that maybe the Sphere card is underwhelming, that the main card is whatever, which I disagree with. I think it's a great main card. Maybe I don't know the first two, like the fighters in the first two fights, but I'm excited to see them. They're Mexican based. This is for Mexican Independence Day. But let me tell you something, right? You know, people are complaining about all these things. What other sport, what other organization is trying stuff like this? Do you ever see boxing going in and spending $20 million on an event just because they want to make a one-time coolest event of all time just to entertain people? Like the UFC essentially knew there was a high likelihood that they were going to suffer a loss by putting on this event, but they wanted to do it because Dana White and his team are passionate about putting on good shows, and they chose to do something unique and different. Is the NBA trying to do a game in the Sphere? Are these other companies in sports trying? Would boxing ever do that? Probably maybe Riyadh season would, but for the most part, no. So anyways, I just want to say I'm really excited for the Sphere card, whatever the ticket prices are and whatever all the controversy. I mean, what do you think about this? Like, why are people, everybody's got something to say. They were mad about the UK time starting late, right? Being on the US time. It's like, they're a business. They're trying to make money. We don't, you know what I mean? What do you think about all the complaints?
Yeah, I think everyone just needs to shut up because Dana White thinking outside the box, trying, instead of having just another event at the Apex or having another event where they've had a bunch of venues. And, something the NFL is doing right now is they're trying to expand internationally. Now, right now, I think there's only a couple international games, but I know there's one team that they're playing in Brazil. They're thinking outside the box. They're trying to draw a new group of fans to come into the NFL. And, I believe that that's what the UFC is trying to do right now, is trying to spark somebody's interest and be like, wow, I don't really like fighting, but the Sphere is awesome. Fuck, let me buy some tickets and see what this is all about. And I'm
Right.
sure that there's going to be people at the Sphere that probably have never watched fighting before, and they're going to be taking some drugs because I'm telling you, the Sphere is just incredible. It's surreal to be in, and they're just going to have such an incredible experience. I know there's a lot of hate going into it, but I tell you what, when we get back Saturday, I'm going to look up tickets, man, and I might even go. I might even try to find a ticket, not for the fights per se. I mean, Sean O'Malley, I want to see, but more for just the experience. Being at the Sphere is something like I've never done before.
Yeah. So, and I wish I could go. I get back way too late. And I'm flying into LA anyways. But yeah, I think that's going to be amazing. I heard Dana White in an interview today talking about what's going to be in store, and essentially in between each fight, there's going to be movies that they're making that's going to be projected on the Sphere that are both, I think, going to tell the stories of the fighters, but also tell the story of fighting as a cultural piece of Mexican, Mexican heritage. So how fighting began in Mexico and how it became so popular, especially I'm sure they're going to talk about boxing and all that stuff, but it's supposed to be dope. I can't wait. Something unique, something different. So let's go. What's up, Anakin? Welcome. And Western Mass Climber says he was supposed to be a mod for another stream, but he came here instead. What a legend. All right. So let's get into the mix because there's some really cool stuff, Justin, that I want to get your opinion on in particular, because there was a really big fight this last weekend, in my opinion, for the welterweight division. We saw Sean Brady, and I watched the fight. It was pretty cool. I thought it was a good fight. We saw Sean Brady go up against Gilbert Durino Burns, who's just an absolute beast fighter. Gilbert, as we know, both of these guys have actually lost to Bilal Muhammad. Sean Brady is adamant that he would beat Bilal Muhammad 9 times out of 10, and that was the one time when they fought that he lost and came up short. But anyways, Justin, first of all, can I get your thoughts on this fight and this performance by Sean Brady as well as Gilbert Burns?
There's the thing, man. Anytime you step in the ring with Gilbert Burns, you're in for a fight. This guy is a fucking dog. But, unfortunately for Gilbert, he suffered some losses as of late, man. He took a couple short notice fights. And as you're, nearing the end of your career, I just don't think that he's in a championship caliber fighter. I think he's still a top 10 guy, but I don't think he's going to be fighting for the belt anytime soon. Now, you look at the opposition, Sean Brady, on the other hand, up and coming, red hot, fucking incredible hands, great wrestling, great grappling. And for him to come in here and do what he did to Gilbert Burns it speaks for itself, man. Sean Brady is the truth. And I tell you what, in the next couple of years, we could see the next UFC champion as Sean Brady.
It was a really great performance. Sean Brady, by the way, is only 31. I believe Gilbert is 38. So I want to ask you a couple other things, because prior to this fight, Gilbert Burns was saying he's going on one more title run. Obviously, the way this went, it seems like that has come to an early halt. But he's 38, and I heard some other folks talking about this fight saying that he looked slower, that he wasn't defending and countering as much when Sean Brady would hit him with a barrage. So and he just kind of cover up and let it end, and then he would fire back with the overhand right. Did you notice similar things? Like, did you feel that there was a noticeable difference in Gilbert Burns' performance here, let's say, compared to when he fought Hamzat?
Yeah, once he fought Hamzat, I feel like something happened to that Hamzat fight, man. Like, it was such a dog fight, and I don't think he's won a fight since, or maybe he's won one. But the thing is, what I see in Gilbert, being the elder, the 38 years old, I don't feel he's trying to win anymore. And I know this isn't going to make this. People might not like this take. I don't feel Gilbert's trying to win. I feel he's trying not to lose. And he's not taking big risks. He's not trying to brawl. Like, when he's down on the cards, he's throwing that one big knockout shot, and he's playing more of a passive defensive game. And you'll see that with fighters that are nearing the end of their career, that have taken a lot of damage, that are already mentally, they're kind of checked out. And I feel that's where Gilbert's at right now. And like I said, he's an incredible fighter. He's entertained us for years, but I don't see him trying to win anymore. I just see him trying not to lose.
Yeah, and now I just checked his record. It is 3 in a row. By the way, he's lost to 3 complete beasts, right? He lost to Bilal, champion. Jack Della Maddalena, a lot of people believe is a future champion. Sean Brady, probably a future champion too. Prior to that, he lost to Hamzat. He had 2 wins in between. He beat Neil Magny and he beat Jorge Masvidal after he lost that Hamzat fight. But he's on a 3-fight losing streak. He is 38. He has taken a bit of damage, and people are saying he looked a little bit shy and nervous to kind of get in there and engage. Maybe that's a combination of all these factors of the damage of the age. It's such a bummer because he's such a fun fighter to watch, and I think people just in generally really like him. But let's talk about Sean Brady. Sean Brady, well, after the victory, Anakin noted that he did call out Ian Gary. He also said when Colby Covington was brought up, he's like, "Oh God, please, please, please let me fight Colby. I'd love to fight Colby." It seems like a lot of people want to fight Colby next, and it seems to me that they think they can beat him. I mean, what do you think would be an interesting matchup for Sean Brady next?
I don't think Colby can beat anybody in the top 5.
Wow.
It's a man. I just think he's that old school one-dimensional fighter. He hasn't won a fight in a really long time. He's kind of like that school kid that just likes to run his mouth and just keeps getting his ass beat. Man, it's like the guy's a fucking joke. I don't even listen to his posts anymore. Like, I don't care what's going on with him. For all I care, he never fights again, and the UFC would probably be a better place. But with that being said, a lot of guys, Sean Brady versus Colby would just be incredible. I think Sean will go out there, defend his takedowns right away, and put some nasty hands on him, and hopefully send him to the shadow realm. But for Sean Brady, I like that the Ian Gary call out, man. I think that's an incredible call out because nobody's calling out Ian Gary right now. Ian Gary's calling out Colby, obviously, and they're talking about other possible matchups, but nobody's getting on the mic and be like, "Hey, I want Ian Gary." Ian Gary is a very promising young up and coming fighter. He displayed some great grappling and wrestling in his last couple fights, and obviously he has great striking. So Sean Brady taking a risk here, calling out this guy that's on red hot on fire. I think it's a great call for him.
Let's see what happens. I'd also still love to see it. And they're saying Colby can't beat anybody, but if he does have one last fight, come on, please. It's gotta be Ian Gary. That'd be so good. But I guess we'll see what happens. All right, moving on. Yeah, so this kind of was a little bit unexpected. I mean, to me, I didn't know that this was happening. I watched Demetrious Johnson, Mighty Mouse's channel. If you guys haven't checked it out, his YouTube channel is blowing up. I think he's killing it on that channel. His content's amazing. I think he's doing pretty well financially from that as well. But apparently, he announced his retirement from mixed martial arts. Did you see his retirement speech?
I did not. I just saw that he retired.
Dude, he was bawling his eyes out. Like, he could barely get through it. And I'm sure it's got to be very emotional and very sad, especially for somebody like him that's had this crazy historic career, not only in the UFC, but in all these other amazing organizations, won championship, etc. So that was pretty interesting to see him kind of talk about everything and break down. And then Dana White came out later on. Somebody asked him, "All right, yeah, did you hear Demetrious Johnson retired?" "Yeah, I heard." "Do you think he'll be in the Hall of Fame?" He says, "Absolutely, 100%. Now, do you remember when Demetrious Johnson was traded for Ben Askren?
I do.
Okay, so somebody was also bringing this up. I just thought this would be an interesting question to ask you. Who do you think benefited more? And also, let's take into consideration the fact that although Ben Askren didn't have a great great run in the UFC, he kind of was the launching pad for Jorge Masvidal stardom. Who do you think won out in that exchange? Or let's even change that question. Do you think that was when we look back, that was a solid decision? Oh, we lost Justin. Okay, he's going to pop back on. But my main question is, was that a winning choice for the UFC to swap out Ben Askren for Demetrious Johnson, especially considered the tremendous success and all the amazing things that Demetrious Johnson has done in the world of mixed martial arts? Okay, Justin, let me throw that question back to you. Do you think the UFC ended up winning out by trading for Ben Askren?
I don't, man. I mean, we're talking about Demetrious Johnson, arguably the best pound for pound fighter of all time. I know people say no, he has losses. John Jones doesn't, but this guy is so much more dynamic. And fighting at flyweight and bantamweight the athletes are so much better than at heavyweight and 205. They're faster, they're more dynamic. Their technique is so clean. I mean, we're talking about wrestling Henry Cejudo, an Olympic champion. And I know John Jones beat Daniel Cormier, who also was a very high level wrestler. But just watching these guys, the speed and the intensity that they go for 25 minutes, and he shows up all the time. If you remember, he picked a guy up around his waist, slammed him down, and transitioned to armbar all as in a flash of a second. You don't see heavyweights doing this. So when we talk about the greatest of all time, Demetrious Johnson, in my opinion, is definitely in the talk.
Yeah, and then we also have really gotten to see his personality. I feel like after he started his YouTube channel, he's such a funny, cool guy. If the UFC maybe could have found a better way to market him back in the day, maybe they would have never even entertained such a trade or moving on from him, because he's just all around awesome.
He's who you want your kids to look up to, man. If you got to take the greatest, I mean, you got George St. Pierre, you got Demetrious Johnson, and again, John Jones, incredible. But I mean, he has a lot of bad shit going on too. You never hear any issue. I've never heard an issue with Demetrious Johnson. I just know he has a channel and he plays video games. I know that's all he does.
Now, I want to actually bring one thing up. You did mention the talent pool or whatever. The fighters are more talented, more skilled overall in the lighter division. So just throw this out as a kind of related topic. I heard Aljamain Sterling talking about Dricus du Plessis recently, and he's like, yeah, man, his style's so crazy, but he's like, it works. But he's like, but that would never work in the bantamweight division. That's what he said. He's like, that goofy style would get destroyed in the bantamweight division. I thought that was really interesting, almost saying that maybe he could get away with it at middleweight, I guess, insinuating that at middleweight, maybe because the talent's different or something. I mean, what do you think about that take?
Well, you got to look at it, man. It's so hard because you look at the smaller guys are going to be faster. It is what it is. And they're going to be probably a little bit more athletic. But when you get up to the bigger weights, now you got to worry about power and one-shot knockout power. So it's kind of like a trade-off. As you go up in weight, guys get a little bit slower, but you're going to get cracked a lot harder. That's why obviously there's more knockouts from 155 to heavyweight. With that being said, how dynamic these guys are, man. It's fucking crazy the pace they can keep. And I've always just been envious of featherweights of how high of a pace they can go. And at the end, they're still ready to go. They're ready to go 5 more rounds. I go 3 rounds and I am exhausted. And I'm sure most pros are. But to see like Demetrious Johnson, Henry Cejudo, and they just go 25 minutes straight, a nonstop gas tank, it's very impressive.
Right. Absolutely. And one thing going back to that idea is the power increases. But I think this accounts for the difference in knockouts and KOs and all that stuff versus decisions of the lower weight classes, is that strength increases, it appears to be disproportionately to thickness of your cranium or your, your ability to absorb strikes. So it's those guys are bigger, so they're stronger, they hit harder, but I don't think there's that much of a difference in terms of the strength of the skull or the ability to ward off a knockout. And that's why we see all these more knockouts. It's not oh, you're smaller, and it's also your head's weaker. It seems to be not the case for whatever reason. But all right, moving on to your buddy who you've trained with, Merab. Just want to come back. Yeah. Just want to come back to this story about his cut and his staph infection. Apparently, he hasn't talked too much about the staph infection. I've listened to a lot of his interviews. He has said that his cut has healed nicely and he's ready to go. People are still saying 2 things. Okay, I want to talk about both of this. So if that was a staph infection, because he didn't really address it, Luke Thomas said that shouldn't be as big of an issue in terms of his cardio, because you don't necessarily have to take oral antibiotics for a staph infection, which will drain your cardio. You could put on topical creams if you catch it early enough, and that can reduce the staph infection. So number 1, so I just want to get your take on that. And also, Number two, I heard MMA Guru say earlier that the cut, even though it's sort of being downplayed and the stitches came out and it's healed, that Sean O'Malley is going to target that cut. And I want to hear your thoughts on this. And because deep down the UFC wants Sean O'Malley to win, if the cut reopens, the ref is going to be incentivized to call the fight off a little bit early if there's excessive bleeding, because the UFC wants Sean O'Malley to win so bad. Okay, so first, what is your take on this in terms of the staph infection and, you know, topical? Like, do you think it's going to be a big deal or not really to his gas tank?
No, I don't think so at all. If he takes antibiotics, yes, it could be. But this close out to a fight, you can just put some triple antibiotics, and I'm sure he has an incredible doctor that's hooking up with the best prescriptions and so on and so forth. So I don't think that's going to be a thing at all. Bella.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry,
And then
I'm yelling stuff.
no worries. And then coming back to the cut. Now it is healed and the stitches are out and it looks good. But do you think Sean O'Malley is going to probably intentionally still target that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And he should too. I mean, Sean O'Malley's a sniper, man. You can't, you anytime you can find a weakness in your opponent's armor. Now, I don't think the ref's going to be incentivized to stop. And here's why, because they're already thinking that this show is going to be a flop. It's going to be a bust. They're going to lose money. They're not, I don't think that they're going to put another situation together that will make fans hate this event even more than it's already not talked about. You know what I mean? Can you imagine if we go into this fight and get stopped in the first round from an eyebrow cut? I mean, then fans are gonna be like, "This was the biggest fucking waste the UFC's ever done." Especially with something is. Remember, when you're trying something new, you need to make you have to have at least these fights exciting. And if it gets stopped by some bullshit cut, I think the fans are gonna be outraged.
Yeah, that is true. Just throwing that out there. That's something that MMA Guru mentioned. I know you're not a biggest fan of him, but also Anakin says he has a feeling O'Malley could win by doctor stoppage. But actually, I hope you're right. I hope that's not the case. I hope we see an awesome fight, maybe a knockout, something like that would be incredible. All right, guys, we're gonna move along to our last topic because I'm gonna have to jump off in a couple minutes here. But let's talk about this last thing. Michael Chandler apparently tweeted back saying he loves the idea of fighting Masvidal. Justin on Friday threw out the idea, which I think is genius, that these two fight, and then the winner could theoretically fight Conor one day, maybe in 2027, 2028. No, I'm just kidding. But at some point in the future, they could fight Conor, and maybe that could be a BMF title fight. Who knows? We could bring the belt. I mean, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. They were going to fight at welterweight. I mean, so it seems like there's interest on both sides, and Michael Chandler supposedly told Jesse on Fire that he's got something in the works. Do you think this is it? And if so, are you 100% in, like, excited about it in December?
Yeah, I would be really excited about this fight. And we talked about this on Friday. You know, I think this is a great fight for Michael Chandler. I think Michael Chandler beats Jorge 9 times out of 10. I can't actually even see a picture, a scenario where Jorge wins this fight. He's coming off the couch. Why is he doing it? He might have ran out of money. You know, he's running Gamebred fight. Maybe they're not doing well. Maybe, you know, he needs a paycheck right now. So he might not be doing it for the right reasons. Although he's going to tell us and he's going to tell the media that, oh, no, I'm focused. Now I have another title running me. Everybody says that. Every time I go fight, oh, I have another UFC running me. It's like, dude, you're fucking old. You're probably just looking for a paycheck. With that being said, it's going to be a good fight for Mike because, again, Mike should win this fight, and it's going to shoot him up more to fight Conor McGregor. Now, on the other hand, if Jorge somehow pulls this off, then you have Jorge Masvidal versus Conor McGregor. We got two guys. I mean, that would just be an incredible matchup, and the shit talk for that matchup would be as well. I think the shit talk between Jorge and Conor will be better than Mike and Conor, to be honest.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. With Jorge and Conor because Jorge actually legitimately doesn't like Conor. Yeah, I just thought of another thing too. Jorge is boys with Dustin Poirier, and Dustin Poirier hates Chandler. So I bet you Jorge will come up with some things that he wants to say to Chandler. It probably doesn't like him either. You know what I mean? Who knows? I don't know. But this is all very exciting. And I think it's a win-win for the UFC. If Michael Chandler beats Jorge, he just gets more steam behind his name, more momentum, because it's going to be an interesting fight. And then throw him against Conor. It's even a even bigger show. And Chandler can talk smack in the cage to Conor about like delaying and all this stuff. So it can build more hype for the fight. And then if Jorge wins, you kind of have this dream fight of two superstars fighting it out for the BMF title. So, all right, I think it's going to happen. I've just convinced myself nothing else makes sense. So I think we're going in We got Jorge Masvidal. I'm calling it Jorge Masvidal versus Michael Chandler in UFC in December, whatever number that is. And let's see what happens. All right, guys, I got to bounce. Justin, thank you so much for joining. Guys, thank you so much for joining today. This was an awesome show. I had fun.
Guys, not to interrupt you, Jose, but hey, we might as well announce it now. Next Monday, we're having a sports psychologist come on, and we're going to talk about the mental. I mean, go ahead, explain what we're going to talk about.
We're going to talk about the mental aspect of fighting. I've got a ton of questions, and we're going to talk about Paddy Pimblett. I want to know sort of the psychological impact of having that cyclical diet, gaining weight and losing weight, that process, what that can do to a fighter. I also want to just talk about what are things that can affect fighters. You know, it's interesting because in other sports, you may have things that get in your way or distract you, but it's like you can recover. Like you have a bad play in a basketball game, next time you can do better. You can kind of recover and bounce back. Whereas in fighting, if you have something that's troubling you and you have one slip in judgment, that can be the end of the fight, right? It's a very unique sport that it can end in an instant if you're not careful. So we're going to ask about all these different elements and aspects of the mental part of fighting and what fighters can do to really protect themselves and perform at the highest level possible. But anyways, that'll be next Monday. All right. So make sure to tune in. Guys, thank you so much for joining. If you did like the video, make sure to click like. And if you want to see us on the regular, make sure to click subscribe. Thank you guys so much for joining, and I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.